The sun had long since set on the dark-ironed dwarves' once thriving city of Shadowforge, casting a deep crimson glow over the crumbling ruins. Krog, a disgraced engineer, trudged through the dusty streets, his heavy boots clinking against the stone pavement. His eyes, once bright with excitement and curiosity, now seemed dull and lifeless, mirroring the desolate landscape around him. As he walked, Krog's thoughts wandered back to the fateful day when his creations had gone awry. His obsession with crafting the perfect automaton had led him down a path of reckless experimentation, culminating in the destruction of Shadowforge's central square. The city's leaders, once eager to harness his innovative spirit, now viewed him as a liability. The once proud engineer stopped at the edge of the city, gazing out at the barren wasteland that had replaced the lush forests and rolling hills surrounding Shadowforge. The roots of the World Tree, said to hold the very essence of Azeroth's life force, were withering away, petrified by some unknown force. A rustling sound came from behind Krog, followed by the soft padding of footsteps. A Magher shaman, her hair a wild tangle of braids and feathers, approached him. Her eyes, like two dark pools of starlight, seemed to bore into his very soul. "Greetings, Krog," she said, her voice slow and husky. "I am Aquila. The whispers of the land have led me to you." Krog raised an eyebrow. "What business do you have with me?" Aquila's gaze never wavered. "The World Tree is dying. Its roots are turning to stone, and I believe it has something to do with the ancient engine beneath the mountains the World Forge." Krog snorted. "You think a mere machine can cause this kind of devastation? I've seen what's left of my own creations. This is no ordinary malfunction." Aquila's expression turned grave. "I fear you may be correct, Krog. But I believe it's not the engine that's malfunctioning, it's been hijacked." Krog raised an eyebrow. "Hijacked? By whom?" "The whispers speak of a cult seeking to reformat Azeroth into a realm of static glass," Aquila replied, her voice tinged with concern. The engineer's eyes narrowed. "And what makes you think I can help?" Aquila's gaze locked onto Krog's. "I've seen your work, Dark Iron. Your innovations are a testament to the power of Azeroth's ancient magic. Together, we might be able to stop this cult and restore balance to the world." Krog snorted again, but this time there was a hint of curiosity beneath his skepticism. "You want me to fix the World Forge? You know I'm not exactly employed anymore." Aquil's smile was a thin, enigmatic line. "Let's just say that in these uncertain times, allegiances are fleeting, and old debts can be repaid in creative ways. Will you help me, Krog?" The engineer hesitated for a moment before nodding. A glimmer of his former passion ignited within him, tempered by the weight of his past mistakes. "All right, Aquila. Let's go fix the World Forge. And maybe, just maybe, we can salvage what's left of my reputation in the process." As they ventured deeper into the mountains, the air grew thick with the scent of aged metal and the faint hum of ancient machinery. Krog led the way, his eyes scanning the rugged terrain as Aquila followed close behind. "I never thought I'd be teaming up with a Magher shaman," Krog said, his voice tinged with a mix of curiosity and wariness. "What makes you think this cult is after the World Forge?" Aquila's gaze drifted to the rocky formations passing by. "The whispers speak of an ancient text hidden within the forge, one that holds the secrets to reshaping reality itself." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I fear they seek to remake Azeroth in their image, one of static glass and perfect order." Krog snorted. "You're talking about a world without magic. That's a recipe for disaster." Aquila's expression turned somber. "The cult believes that with the Forge's power, they can erase the chaos and uncertainty that plagues our world. But at what cost?" As they climbed higher, the terrain grew more treacherous. The sound of rushing water grew louder, and Krog led Aquila through a narrow passageway hidden behind a waterfall. "Welcome to the World Forge's entrance," Krog said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "You can't get much closer without tripping over the actual machinery." Aquila surveyed the cavernous space, her gaze sweeping across the towering contraptions and glowing crystal matrices. The air was heavy with the scent of burning oil and the distant thrumming of ancient engines. "This is incredible," Aquila breathed. "I've never seen anything like it. How does it work?" Krog grinned, his teeth glinting in the flickering torchlight. "That's the beauty of it, I'm not entirely sure. But I can tell you that the forge has been dormant for centuries. Whatever cult is behind this, they must have found a way to reactivate it. As they ventured deeper into the forge, the duo encountered signs of recent activity: scorch marks on the stone walls, faint trails of oil and hydraulic fluid, and discarded tooling. Acula's eyes narrowed as she examined the evidence. "This cult is no amateur," she said, her voice laced with concern. "They must have a deep understanding of the forge's inner workings to reactivate it." Krog snorted. "You're telling me I've never seen anything like this? Whoever they are not just some bored orcs looking for trouble. This is calculated, deliberate, and terrifying." Their conversation was interrupted by a series of shrill whines and flashing lights emanating from the forge's central core. The air seemed to vibrate with energy as ancient machinery roared back to life. "Well, it looks like we've got our answer," Krog said, his eyes locked onto the swirling vortex of light. "The cult has indeed hijacked the world forge, and we're running out of time." Acula's expression turned grim. "We need to act quickly. If they succeed in reshaping reality, Azeroth will be lost forever." Krog's gaze met hers, a spark of determination igniting within his eyes. "Time to get to work," he said, a hint of his old enthusiasm creeping back into his voice. "Let's see if we can't give those cultists a little surprise, and maybe, just maybe, save our world from going static." As the ancient machinery roared back to life, Acula and Krog exchanged a look of grim determination. The air was electric with energy, and the very fabric of reality seemed to be trembling in anticipation. "Well, it looks like we've got our answer," Krog said, his eyes locked onto the swirling vortex of light at the heart of the forge. "The cult has indeed hijacked the world forge, and we're running out of time." Acula's expression turned grim. "We need to act quickly. If they succeed in reshaping reality, Azeroth will be lost forever." Krog's gaze met hers, a spark of determination igniting within his eyes. "Time to get to work," he said, a hint of his old enthusiasm creeping back into his voice. "Let's see if we can't give those cultists a little surprise. And maybe, just maybe, save our world from going static." With that, the unlikely duo set off to infiltrate the world forge and stop the cult before it was too late. They moved swiftly and silently through the machinery-filled caverns, their footsteps echoing off the ancient stone walls. As they ventured deeper into the forge, they began to notice subtle changes in the air. The energy emanating from the central core grew stronger, and the whines of machinery took on a new pitch. Acula's eyes scanned the area, her shamanic senses on high alert for any signs of danger or deception. "Krog, I think we're getting close," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the din of machinery. "I can feel the pulse of the forge growing stronger." Krog nodded, his eyes fixed on a large, circular door emblazoned with ancient runes. The air around it seemed to vibrate with energy, and Acula could sense the weight of centuries-old magic emanating from beyond the portal. "This looks like our way in," Krog said, his voice slow and deliberate. Acula nodded, her hand reaching out to touch the door's surface. As she did, a surge of power flowed through her, imbuing her with ancient knowledge and hidden truths. The runes on the door seemed to shift, rearranging themselves into a new pattern that spoke directly to Acula's shamanic instincts. "The key," she whispered, her eyes locking onto Krog's. "We need the key to unlock the heart of the forge." Krog nodded, his gaze flicking back and forth between the door and the central core. The cultists were closing in on their goal, and every moment counted. With a swift motion, Acula reached out and touched the runes once more. The air seemed to vibrate with energy as the ancient lock disengaged, revealing a hidden chamber deep within the forge's heart. "Well, it looks like we've got our way in," Krog said, his voice tinged with excitement. Acula nodded, her eyes locked onto the chamber beyond the door. The air was thick with power, and she could sense the cultists' dark magic swirling around them like a living entity. "This is it," she whispered. "This is where we stop them." With a deep breath, Acula pushed open the door, revealing a sight that left her breathless. The chamber beyond was filled with twisted, corrupted tomes bound in black leather and adorned with strange symbols. The air reeked of dark magic, and the very essence of reality seemed to be warped by the cultist's presence. Krog's eyes widened as he took in the scene before them. "Well, I think we found our problem," he said, his voice low and deadly. Acula nodded, her gaze burning with determination. Together, they would face whatever horrors lay within, and do everything in their power to stop the cultists from reshaping reality itself. The fate of Azeroth hung in the balance, and only they stood between the darkness and the light. As Aquila stepped into the chamber, she felt the weight of her mission settling onto her shoulders. Before her lay a labyrinth of twisted tomes, their black leather bindings seeming to writhe like living serpents. The air reeked of dark magic, and the very fabric of reality appeared to be distorted by the cultist's presence. Krog followed closely behind, his eyes scanning the room with a mixture of fascination and trepidation. "What kind of sorcery is this?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the creaking of ancient parchment. Aquila's gaze narrowed as she surveyed the tomes, her mind racing with the implications. These were no ordinary books, each one seemed to contain a fragment of Azeroth's very essence. The cultist's dark magic had corrupted them, warping their contents to serve their twisted goals. Together, they approached the nearest tome, its cover embossed with an intricate symbol that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Aquila reached out a trembling hand, hesitating for a moment before gingerly opening the book. The pages within were filled with cryptic symbols and diagrams, depicting the machinations of the cultist plan. As she turned the pages, Aquila's eyes widened in horror. These tomes contained the blueprints for reshaping Azeroth itself, bending reality to the cultist's whims. Krog's face had paled as he scanned the contents, his voice barely above a whisper. "By the spirits, they mean to reformat the world." Aquila's grip on the tome tightened, her knuckles whitening with rage. "We can't let them do this," she hissed. Krog nodded, his eyes burning with determination. "Not if we have anything to say about it." As they delved deeper into the chamber, they discovered a series of ancient contraptions, their twisted mechanisms humming with dark energy. The air seemed to vibrate with power, and Aquila sensed the pulse of the world forge itself, the very heart of Azeroth. "This is where they are trying to tap into the forge's power," Krog said, his voice low and deadly. "If we don't stop them, they'll reshape reality itself." Aquila's gaze locked onto a central contraption, its core glowing with an otherworldly light. This was the key to their plan, the focal point for the cultist's dark magic. Without hesitation, Aquila reached out and touched the runes etched into the device's surface. The air seemed to shudder as the machine responded, its energy coursing through her like a jolt of lightning. The world around them began to distort, reality bending to accommodate the cultist's twisted plans. As the forge's power surged through her, Aquila felt herself becoming attuned to its ancient rhythms, a connection that could either save or destroy Azeroth. Krog's eyes locked onto hers, his gaze burning with urgency. "We need to stop this," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the creaking of the machinery. "Before it's too late." Aquila nodded, her determination solidifying into a plan. They would have to find a way to merge their conflicting magics, one tied to the earth and the other forged in the heart of the world forged to counteract the cultist's dark energies. As they prepared to face the unknown, the air around them seemed to thicken with anticipation. The fate of Azeroth hung precariously in balance. Would their combined strength be enough to save the world, or would the darkness consume it forever? Aquila and Krog stood at the edge of the forge's central chamber, their eyes locked onto the twisted cultists as they channeled the ancient machine's power. The air was heavy with anticipation, the very fabric of reality straining to accommodate the dark magic. The Makar shaman felt the world forge's energy coursing through her like a river, its primal force calling out to be harnessed. She could feel the pulse of Azeroth itself, its lifeblood slowing as the cultists drained the planet's vitality. Her gaze narrowed as she surveyed the scene before her. Krog, too, was focused on the task at hand. His eyes burned with determination as he assessed the situation. The dark iron engineer's hands were clenched into fists, his mind racing with strategies to stop the cultists. He glanced at Aquila, his expression a mixture of concern and hope. Without breaking her gaze from the cultists, Aquila reached out with her mind, probing the ancient machinery for any weaknesses or vulnerabilities. Krog followed suit, drawing upon his knowledge of dark iron engineering to analyze the forge's inner workings. Together, they pieced together the complex web of energies and mechanisms that governed the world forge. The air seemed to vibrate as Aquila and Krog began to merge their conflicting magics. The Makar shaman's earthy powers blended with the dark iron engineer's arcane abilities, forging a bond between them. Their connection grew stronger, resonating with the ancient rhythms of the forge. As one, they raised their hands, channels of energy arcing from their fingertips like twin suns. The air crackled with anticipation as the cultist's dark magic faltered, their hold on the world forge's power wavering. "Now's our chance," Krog whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the machinery. Aquila nodded, her determination solidifying into a plan. Together, they would counteract the cultists' energies and restore Azeroth's pulse. The fate of the world hung in balance. Would their combined strength be enough to save it, or would the darkness consume it forever? With a deep breath, Aquila and Krog surged forward, their merged magics pouring into the world forge like a floodgate opening. The air around them seemed to shudder as reality itself began to bend and warp, the very fabric of existence trembling with anticipation. The cultists, sensing their hold on the forge's power slipping, redoubled their efforts. Dark energies swirled around them, drawing upon the ancient machinery's primal force. But Aquila and Krog were undaunted, their bond growing stronger as they channeled the world forge's energy. As the battle raged on, the chamber began to glow with an otherworldly light. The air seemed to thicken, reality itself bending and warping in response to the dueling magics. Azeroth's pulse faltered, its lifeblood slowing as the cultist's dark energies drained the planet's vitality. The fate of the world hung precariously in balance. Would Aquila and Krog succeed in restoring Azeroth's pulse, or would the darkness consume it forever? The outcome was far from certain, as the two warriors continued to merge their magics, determined to save the world from the brink of destruction. The air pulsed with an otherworldly energy as Aquila and Krog's merged magic clashed with the cultist's dark powers. The chamber was bathed in a sickly yellow glow, like the light of a dying sun. Reality seemed to be warping and bending around them, as if the very fabric of existence was being stretched to its limits. Aquila's eyes blazed with determination as she poured all her energy into the combined magic. Her Maghar's shamanic abilities meshed seamlessly with Krog's dark iron engineering skills, creating a synergy that seemed almost palpable. The ancient machinery of the world forge hummed and whirred in response, its primal force coursing through them like lifeblood. Krog's face was set in a grim mask, his eyes fixed intently on the cultists as he channeled the forge's energy into their combined spell. His dark iron engineering skills allowed him to tap into the ancient machine's power, amplifying Aquila's magic and turning it against their enemies. The cultists, fueled by their own twisted zealotry, redoubled their efforts in response. Dark energies swirled around them like a maelstrom of shadowy tendrils, drawing upon the forge's primal force to fuel their own spells. The air was thick with malevolent intent, as if the very darkness itself was seeking to consume Azeroth. Aquila and Krog fought back, their combined magic pulsating through the chamber like a beacon of hope. Reality seemed to bend and warp around them, as if the very fabric of existence was being rewritten in response to their dueling powers. The battle raged on, the two warriors pouring all their energy into their merged magic. The cultists stumbled backward, their dark energies faltering under the onslaught. Azeroth's pulse began to slow, its lifeblood draining away as the planet's vitality was siphoned off by the cultists' evil sorcery. And yet Aquila and Krog refused to yield. They fought on, their bond growing stronger with every passing moment. Their magic seemed to take on a life of its own, swirling around them in a vortex of colour and light as they channeled the world forge's primal power into their spells. The chamber began to glow with an intense blue light, like the heart of a star. Reality itself seemed to be bending and warping around them, as if the very fabric of existence was being rewritten in response to their combined magic. And then, in an instant, everything stopped. The cultists' dark energies faltered, their spells unwinding as Azeroth's pulse began to rise once more. The chamber fell silent, the only sound the gentle hum of the world forge as it slowly came back online. Aquila and Krog stood panting, their eyes locked on each other in a moment of mutual understanding. They had saved Azeroth from the brink of destruction, but at what cost? The planet's pulse was still weak, its lifeblood slowing like a dying ember. The two warriors exchanged a glance, their bond forged in the heart of the world forge tempered by the trials they had faced. They knew that their work was far from over. Azeroth still needed to be healed, and the cultists needed to be brought to justice. But for now, they stood victorious, their combined magic having saved the world from the abyss. The chamber slowly darkened, the world forges hum fading into silence as Aquila and Krog stepped forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As Aquila and Krog emerged from the world forge, they were met with a landscape both familiar and yet transformed. The once vibrant colours of Azeroth's natural beauty had dulled, as if the very essence of life had been drained from the earth. The air was heavy with an unnatural silence, punctuated only by the distant rumble of thunder. The Maghar's shaman and the dark iron engineer exchanged a sombre glance, their triumph over the cultists tempered by the dire reality that lay before them. Azeroth's pulse still lagged, his lifeblood struggling to flow through the planet's ravaged veins. Their path was clear. They had to find the source of the damage and work to restore Azeroth's natural balance. Aquila, ever the pragmatist, set her sights on the nearby town of Ironhaven, hoping to gather information about the extent of the damage and possible solutions. Krog, meanwhile, felt an inexplicable pull toward the mountain range that had been their home for so long. He sensed a deep connection to the land, as if his shamanic abilities were attuned to the planet's very heartbeat. His gaze drifted upward, toward the peaks where the ancient Makar clans once roamed. The two warriors walked in silence, their footsteps echoing through the desolate landscape. As they approached Ironhaven, they saw that the town had suffered greatly. Buildings lay in ruin, and the streets were choked with debris. The people of Ironhaven huddled together, their faces etched with worry and despair. Aquila and Krog moved among them, asking questions and seeking out anyone who might possess knowledge about the World Forge's malfunction. They spoke to the town's elder, a grizzled old dwarf named Grimbold Ironfist, who told them of strange occurrences in the weeks leading up to the catastrophe. Cultists, he growled, his eyes clouding with anger. They came out of nowhere, spreading their darkness and chaos. We thought they were just a minor annoyance at first, but when the World Forge started malfunctioning, we knew we were in trouble. As Aquila and Krog continued to gather information, they began to piece together the cultist plan. The dark magic users had sought to reformat Azeroth, erasing its history and natural balance in favour of a sterile, glass-like realm. The more they learned, the more determined Aquila and Krog became to stop the cultists once and for all. They spent the evening gathering supplies and planning their next move, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. As night fell, they set out into the darkness, their footsteps carrying them toward the unknown. The mountains loomed ahead, their peaks shrouded in mist. Aquila and Krog knew that the cultists were likely hiding among the ancient Makar ruins, waiting to strike again. Their combined magic pulsed with anticipation as they crested a ridge, gazing out upon a landscape both familiar and yet transformed. The ruins of an ancient city lay before them, its crumbling spires reaching toward the stars like skeletal fingers. The cultists were here, all right. And Aquila and Krog were ready to face them head-on, their bond forged in the heart of the World Forge, tempered by the trials they had faced. As they descended into the ruins, the air grew thick with an otherworldly energy. Aquila's eyes narrowed, his gaze scanning the crumbling structures for any sign of their quarry. Krog's senses were on high alert as well, her Makar instincts honed to detect even the faintest whispers of dark magic. The duo moved in tandem, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Every step felt like a gamble, with one misstep potentially triggering an ancient trap or awakening a long-dormant ghost. Aquila's gaze landed on a particularly imposing structure, a crumbling temple dedicated to the ancient Makar god, Ragnaros. The air around it seemed to vibrate with dark power, as if the very stones were infused with malevolent energy. "This feels like a hub," Aquila said, his voice low and urgent. "Whatever the cultists are planning, it's centered on this temple." Krog nodded, her eyes locked onto the structure. "I sense it too. The dark magic is stronger here than anywhere else in the ruins." The two companions approached the temple cautiously, their senses on high alert for any sign of ambush or hidden dangers. As they entered the main chamber, Aquila's gaze swept the room, taking in the symbols etched into the walls, ancient Makar runes that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Krog moved to stand beside him, her eyes locked onto the central altar. A dark crystal, its surface etched with twisted, nightmarish visions, sat atop a pedestal of black stone. The air around it seemed to writhe and twist, as if reality itself was being warped by some unseen force. "This is where they are focusing their power," Aquila whispered. "We need to stop them before they can finish the ritual." Krog's eyes flashed with determination. "He'll take care of the dark magic. You focus on disabling whatever machinery is powering this abomination." With a deep breath, the two companions went to work. Krog summoned a blast of primal energy, channeling the ancient power of the earth to disrupt the cultist's dark magic. Aquila, meanwhile, set about dismantling the ancient machinery that fueled the ritual. As they worked, the air around them began to clear, the twisted visions etched into the dark crystal beginning to fade. The ritual's power began to wane, and with it, the corrupting influence of the World Forge started to recede. But just as victory seemed within their grasp, a figure emerged from the shadows, a hooded cultist, its eyes blazing with an unnatural intensity. "You fools," the cultist spat. "You think you can stop us? We have already won. The World Forge is ours to command." Aquila and Krog exchanged a glance, their bond forged in the heart of the World Forge flashing with determination. Together, they charged forward, their combined magic exploding into a maelstrom of light and fury that would decide the fate of Azeroth itself. As Aquila and Krog advanced on the hooded cultist, their magic swelling around them like a vortex of fury, the air seemed to distort and ripple with tension. The cultist's eyes glowed with an otherworldly energy, its very presence seeming to draw the light out of the surroundings. "You may have stopped our ritual for now," the cultist hissed, "but you've only delayed the inevitable. The World Forge will still be used, and Azeroth will still be remade in its image." Aquila's eyes narrowed, her magic crackling with restrained power. "You're not going to remake anything except a pile of scrap metal," she said, her voice cold as steel. Krog snarled, his primal energy building into a wave of fury. "We're not going to let you or your dark magic destroy our world." The cultist sneered, its eyes flashing with contempt. "You think your petty magic can stop us? We have the power of the World Forge on our side. Nothing can stop us now." With that, the cultist raised its hand, and the air around it seemed to shimmer and distort, as if reality itself was bending to its will. A dark tendril of energy lashed out, seeking to ensnare Aquila and Krog. Aquila reacted with lightning speed, summoning a shield of crackling magic that deflected the cultist's attack. Krog, meanwhile, unleashed a blast of primal energy that sent the cultist stumbling backward. The hooded figure regained its footing, its eyes burning with an unnatural intensity. "You may have stopped our ritual for now," it hissed, "but you've only delayed the inevitable. The World Forge will still be used, and Azeroth will still be remade in its image." Aquila's face twisted into a snarl of rage. "Not if we have anything to say about it," she said, her magic building into a storm of fury. Krog echoed her sentiment, his primal energy surging with a power that seemed almost titanic. Together, the two companions charged forward, their combined magic exploding into a maelstrom of light and fury that threatened to engulf everything in its path. The cultist stumbled backward, its eyes flashing with surprise as Aquila and Krog bore down on it like a force of nature. The air around them seemed to distort and ripple, as if reality itself was being torn apart by their combined magic. As they closed in, the cultist's eyes locked onto theirs, its gaze burning with an unnatural intensity. "You fools," it hissed, its voice dripping with contempt. "You think you can stop us? We have the power of the World Forge on our side." Aquila and Krog ignored the cultist's taunts, their magic building into a storm that threatened to consume everything in its path. The air seemed to shimmer and distort, as if reality itself was being rewritten by their combined magic. In that moment, it seemed as though anything was possible, as though Aquila and Krog could rewrite the very fabric of existence itself. And with that thought, they unleashed a blast of magic that would decide the fate of Azeroth once and for all. As one, Aquila and Krog unleashed their combined fury upon the cultist, their magic swirling around them like a vortex of pure energy. The air crackled with power as they channeled the raw might of the World Forge into a blast that threatened to incinerate everything in its path. The cultists, however, proved to be more resilient than expected. As Aquila and Krog's magic washed over it, the dark-robed figure stumbled back, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The air seemed to distort and ripple around it, as if reality itself was bending to accommodate its twisted will. "You may have momentarily disrupted our plans," the cultist sneered, "but you've only delayed the inevitable. The World Forge will still be used, and Azeroth will still be remade in its image." Aquila's face twisted with rage as she beheld the cultist's unyielding determination. "Not if we have anything to say about it," she snarled, her magic building once more into a storm of fury. Krog echoed her sentiment, his primal energy surging with renewed power. Together, the two companions charged forward once more, their combined magic erupting into a maelstrom of light and fury that threatened to engulf everything in its path. The cultist stumbled backward, its eyes flashing with surprise as Aquila and Krog bore down on it like a force of nature. The air around them seemed to distort and ripple, as if reality itself was being rewritten by their combined magic. As they closed in, the cultist's gaze locked onto theirs, its intensity burning with an unnatural fervour. "You fools," it hissed, its voice dripping with contempt. "You think you can stop us? We have the power of the World Forge on our side." Aquila and Krog ignored the cultist's taunts, their magic building once more into a storm that threatened to consume everything in its path. The air seemed to shimmer and distort, as if reality itself was being rewritten by their combined magic. In that moment, it seemed as though anything was possible, as though Aquila and Krog could rewrite the very fabric of existence itself. And with that thought, they unleashed a blast of magic that would decide the fate of Azeroth once and for all. The cultist stumbled back, its eyes flashing with surprise as Aquila and Krog's combined magic washed over it like a wave of pure energy. The air seemed to distort and ripple around them, as if reality itself was being rewritten by their combined magic. As the blast subsided, the cultist lay motionless on the ground, its dark robed form seeming almost pale in comparison to the intense power that had been unleashed upon it. Aquila and Krog stood panting, their combined magic still crackling with energy as they gazed down at the defeated cultist. "You may have won this small battle," Aquila said, her voice husky from exertion, "but you've only delayed the inevitable. The World's Forge will still be used, and Azeroth will still be remade in its image." Krog echoed her sentiment, his primal energy surging with renewed power. Together, they charged forward once more, their combined magic erupting into a maelstrom of light and fury that threatened to engulf everything in its path. The cultist stumbled backward, its eyes flashing with surprise as Aquila and Krog bore down on it like a force of nature. The air around them seemed to distort and ripple, as if reality itself was being rewritten by their combined magic. As they closed in, the cultist's gaze locked onto theirs, its intensity burning with an unnatural fervour. "You fools," it hissed, its voice dripping with contempt. "You think you can stop us? We have the power of the World Forge on our side." The cultist's words hung in the air like a challenge, as Aquila and Krog bore down on it with their combined magic. The ground shook beneath their feet, tremors radiating outward from the ancient machinery that hummed and thrummed around them. The World Forge pulsed with power, its crystalline structures glowing brighter with each passing moment. "You're wrong," Aquila said, her voice steady despite the raging storm of energy coursing through her veins. "We don't need the World Forge to remake Azeroth in our image. We can do it ourselves, without destroying everything that's good and pure." Krog snarled, his primal energy surging with a fierce intensity. "You're just trying to justify your own darkness," he growled, his eyes blazing with contempt. The cultist laughed, its voice like the tinkling of broken glass. "You don't understand," it said, its gaze darting back and forth between Aquila and Krog. "We're not trying to remake Azeroth for ourselves. We're trying to restore it to its true form." Aquila's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" she demanded. The cultist smiled, its face a deathly pale oval skin. "Azeroth was never meant to be a world of chaos and destruction," said. "It was meant to be a realm of crystal beauty, where the very fabric of reality is static and unchanging." Krog's eyes flared with fury. "You're talking about erasing everything that makes Azeroth worth fighting for," he snarled. The cultist shrugged. "Perhaps. But think about it, a world without war, without suffering, without the constant struggle to survive. Wouldn't that be a better place?" Aquila's gaze was cold and unforgiving. "You're asking us to give up our freedom, our autonomy," she said. "We'd be nothing more than puppets, trapped in a never-ending cycle of static glass." The cultist's smile grew wider. "Oh, but you wouldn't even have to think about it. The World Forge would take care of everything for you. You could just sit back and enjoy the beauty of Azeroth, unchanging and eternal." Aquila's eyes flashed with anger. "You're insane," she spat. The cultist chuckled, its laughter like the shattering of crystal. "Perhaps. But we'll get our way. And when we do, you'll be nothing more than a footnote in history, a mere relic of a world that once was." As the cultist finished speaking, Aquila and Krog charged forward once more, their combined magic erupting into a maelstrom of light and fury that threatened to engulf everything in its path. The World Forge pulsed with power, its crystalline structures glowing brighter as the two enemies clashed in a battle that would decide the fate of Azeroth. In the heart of the storm, Aquila's eyes locked onto Krog's, their gazes burning with a fierce intensity. They were one being, united by their magic and their determination to stop the cultists at all costs. And as they fought on, they knew that their bond was strong enough to overcome any obstacle, no matter how formidable. Together, they plunged into the depths of the World Forge, their magic swirling around them like a vortex of pure energy. The machine hummed and thrummed in response, its crystalline structures glowing brighter as Aquila and Krog danced with the power that lay within. In this moment, They were one being, united by their magic and their determination to save Azeroth from the cultist's twisted vision. And as they fought on, they knew that their bond was strong enough to overcome any obstacle, no matter how formidable. The fate of Azeroth hung in the balance, as Aquila and Krog clashed with the cultists in a battle that would decide the course of history. As they delved deeper into the World Forge, Aquila and Krog's combined magic continued to fuel their determination to stop the cultists. The air around them crackled with energy as they channeled their powers into a swirling vortex of light and fury. The machine responded in kind, its crystalline structures pulsating with an intense blue glow. The cultists, however, refused to yield. They unleashed a barrage of dark magic, attempting to disrupt the flow of power that Aquila and Krog had tapped into. The Maghaw shaman's primal connection to the land seemed to amplify their powers, allowing them to absorb and redirect the cultists' attacks. Aquila's eyes gleamed with an icy intensity as she worked in tandem with Krog. Together, they wove a tapestry of magic that threatened to engulf everything within its path. The World Forge itself began to hum with power, its ancient machinery responding to the duo's combined might. In this moment, Aquila and Krog were one being, their bond forged in the heart of the machine. They moved as one, their magic a symphony of light and fury that seemed almost divine. The cultists stumbled backward, their dark energies faltering against the onslaught of primal power. As the battle raged on, Aquila's thoughts turned to the secrets hidden within the World Forge. She remembered the whispers she had heard among the Dark Iron engineers, rumours of ancient knowledge and forgotten technologies waiting to be unlocked. The Maghaw shaman's gaze locked onto hers, a silent understanding passing between them. Together, they coalesced their magic into a single, blindingly bright blast. The World Forge responded in kind, its crystalline structures glowing with an intensity that seemed to rival the sun itself. The cultists, caught in the crossfire of their combined might, stumbled backward as one, their dark energies faltering against the sheer force of Aquila and Krog's magic. The machine itself began to shudder and tremble, its ancient machinery groaning under the strain. Aquila and Krog stood at the epicenter of the storm, their bond forged in the heart of the World Forge. They were one being, united by their determination to stop the cultists and save Azeroth from the brink of destruction. As the dust settled, Aquila and Krog stood tall, their magic spent but their will unbroken. The World Forge hummed with power, its crystalline structures glowing with an otherworldly intensity. The fate of Azeroth hung in the balance as the duo prepared to face whatever lay ahead. The cultists, stunned by the sheer force of Aquila and Krog's combined might, stumbled backward in disarray. Their leader, a hooded figure shrouded in darkness, stepped forward, its eyes blazing with an intensity that seemed almost human. "You fools," the figure spat, its voice dripping with venom. "You think you can stop us? We have the power of the World Forge at our fingertips. We will remake Azeroth in our image, and none shall stand in our way." Aquila's eyes narrowed, her gaze locked onto the cultist leader. She knew that this was no ordinary foe, one who would stop at nothing to achieve its twisted goals. And yet, there was something about the figure that seemed almost familiar. Krog's primal instincts seemed to sense it as well. His eyes gleamed with a fierce intensity, his magic coalescing into a swirling vortex of power. The World Forge hummed in response, its crystalline structures glowing brighter as the two enemies prepared to face off against each other once more. The fate of Azeroth hung in the balance, as Aquila and Krog stood ready to face whatever lay ahead. Would they be able to stop the cultists and save their world from destruction? Only time would tell. As the cultist leader began to chant, its eyes burning with an unnatural energy, Aquila and Krog prepared for battle. The air was charged with tension as the two enemies faced off against each other. The leader's voice rose and fell in a hypnotic rhythm, drawing the dark magic from the World Forge and channeling it into a swirling vortex of shadowy power. Aquila could feel the force coursing through her veins, tempting her to unleash her own fury upon the cultist. But she resisted, knowing that giving in would only fuel the darkness. Krog, however, was another story altogether. His primal instincts urged him to charge forward and tear apart the cultist with his raw power. Aquila saw the temptation in his eyes and knew she had to act quickly to keep him from losing control. With a swift motion, Aquila reached out and grasped Krog's arm, her fingers digging deep into his thick muscle. She poured all her energy into calming the shaman, using her own magic to counteract the cultist's dark influence. The World Forge hummed in response, its crystalline structures glowing brighter as the two enemies clashed. The air was filled with the sound of crackling energy and the scent of ozone. As Acula's magic took hold, Krog's eyes cleared, his gaze refocusing on the cultist leader. His face twisted into a snarl, but he stood frozen, his power contained by Acula's will. The cultist leader cackled maniacally, its dark magic swirling around it like a cloak. "Fools," it spat. "You think you can stop me? I have the world forge on my side." Acula and Krog exchanged a glance, their unspoken understanding sparking a plan. They knew they had to end this fight quickly before the cultist's power grew too strong. With a flick of her wrist, Acula unleashed a blast of fire that would have incinerated any ordinary foe. But the cultist leader simply laughed, his dark magic absorbing the flames as if they were nothing more than a gentle breeze. Krog growled, his eyes flashing with anger. He charged forward, his primal power surging to meet the cultist's darkness. The two forces clashed in a spectacular display of light and sound, the world forge humming in response. The battle raged on, Acula and Krog working in tandem to try and overcome their foe. But despite their combined might, the cultist leader refused to yield. Its power continued to grow, fueled by the ancient machinery beneath the mountains. As the fight wore on, Acula began to realize that something was off. The cultist leader's magic seemed almost familiar. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she sensed a connection between this foe and their own pasts. Krog, sensing her hesitation, glanced at her with a questioning gaze. Acula shook her head, focusing on the battle at hand. They didn't have time to worry about the cultist leader's secrets, they had to stop it before it was too late. With a fierce cry, Krog unleashed a blast of primal power that sent the cultist leader stumbling backward. Acula took advantage of the opening, channeling her own magic into a beam of pure energy that struck the foe with precision. The world forge hummed in response, its crystalline structures glowing brighter as the two enemies prepared for one final showdown. The fate of Azeroth hung in the balance, and only time would tell if Acula and Krog could emerge victorious against the cultist's dark magic.